You know, right at the very heart of Bitcoin's protocol, there's a serious conflict brewing. And this isn't just about code. This is a battle over what Bitcoin is and what it should be. It's a clash between two powerful visions for the future, and honestly, the outcome could change absolutely everything.
And it all boils down to this one question. Is Bitcoin meant to be a pure, untouchable network for sound money and only sound money, or is it supposed to be this flexible, permissionless canvas where anyone can build and store whatever they want? For a long time, we could kind of have it both ways, but now these two ideas are clashing for real.
So this conflict really takes shape in two different versions of the Bitcoin software. On one side, you've got Bitcoin Core. That's the one most people run. They're pushing for more flexibility, more on-chain experimentation. But challenging them is Bitcoin Knots, a really prominent alternative that's all about purity. They argue that the network has to be protected from what they see as non-financial spam.
All right, so let's dig into the first side of this argument, the established view from Bitcoin Core. Their whole philosophy is really rooted in this idea of creating a vibrant, experimental ecosystem that lives directly on the blockchain itself. The flashpoint, the thing that kicked this all off, is a specific technical change in Bitcoin Core's upcoming version 30. For a long time, there's been this tiny 80-byte limit on a piece of data in a transaction called OP_return. Well, Core is getting rid of it. Now, that might sound like a small technical detail, but it's a huge deal. It opens the floodgates for much larger amounts of, well, any kind of data to be stored on the Bitcoin blockchain forever.
And proponents, like the well-known developer Jameson Lopp, they argue this change is absolutely essential for Bitcoin to evolve. They see this future where Bitcoin isn't just for sending money, it's for anchoring digital art, ordinals, for verifying documents, for building decentralized ID systems, all on the most secure computer network in human history. For them, this is about unlocking Bitcoin's true potential. Okay, but not everyone is buying into that vision. And that brings us to the challenger, Bitcoin Knots. From their perspective, this innovation is actually a direct threat to what makes Bitcoin, Bitcoin. Bitcoin Knots is maintained by Luke Dashier, who's been a Bitcoin developer for a very, very long time. And he sees Core's change as a really dangerous mistake. He basically argues that allowing all this unrestricted data just turns the blockchain into a permanent dumping ground for what he calls spam. It bloats the chain, makes it harder for people to run nodes, and it distracts from Bitcoin's one true purpose, being the best money possible. And let me be clear, this is not some fringe opinion. Since this whole debate really blew up around June 2025, the number of nodes running Bitcoin Knots has jumped by over 46%. That shows you there's a really significant and growing part of the network that is actively choosing to reject the path Core is taking. And this quote from a Knots supporter on Reddit, it just perfectly captures the feeling. For a lot of these folks, running Knots isn't just a technical decision. It's a political one. It's a statement about self-sovereignty. It's saying, I get to decide what rules I enforce on my node, not some dominant developer group. It's really about that fundamental right to run the code you want. So you see, this is way more than just a debate between developers. To really get what's at stake here, we have to look at the power dynamics across the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. It's complicated. See, Bitcoin consensus isn't something that's dictated from on high. It's this delicate dance between a bunch of different groups. You've got your economic nodes, think exchanges, payment processors. You've got investors, from individuals to the big ETFs. You have media influencers shaping the conversation, miners securing the network, developers writing the code, and of course, the users and apps building on top of it all. Each one of them has a different kind of power. And here's the crucial part. That power isn't static. It shifts, and it shifts dramatically depending on where we are in the process. Early on, in the idea phase, developers and media influencers have a ton of influence. But as you get closer to actually activating a change, the power swings hard towards miners and, most importantly, the big economic nodes like exchanges. They're the ones who decide what asset they're going to list. And investors? Their power peaks late in the game, when their money can literally make or break a new chain. And that brings us to the really scary part, the most serious potential outcome of all of this. The risk that the Bitcoin network could literally tear itself in two. This flowchart here lays out how it could happen. If an upgrade is pushed through by an alternative client like Knots, but it doesn't get the buy-in from those powerful economic players, well, you follow the arrows and you land right here, open to chain split risk. That is the absolute red zone.
So how does a split actually get triggered? Well, there's a mechanism with a pretty chilling name for it, a bounty claim. Here's the scenario. Imagine people start using a new feature on the COTS chain, one that isn't recognized by the old core chain. The funds that get locked up using that new feature, they effectively become a giant pot of money, a bounty, just sitting there. And it creates this massive financial incentive for a miner on the old chain to create a single transaction that breaks the new rule and just takes it all. Okay, let's walk through this diagram because this is really important. Look at the top left. The new chain, the NOTS chain, is building blocks, and let's say a bounty of 200 Bitcoin accumulates. Then someone on the legacy core chain creates one single bounty claim transaction. A miner on that legacy chain grabs it, puts it in a block, and instantly claims that entire 200 BTC bounty for themselves. At that exact moment, you have a chain split. Two competing histories of Bitcoin, one where the bounty is safe and one where it was just stolen. The network is now broken, and everybody has to choose a side.
Now, I know this sounds like really high-level, abstract stuff, but the consequences of a chain split are incredibly real for anyone who actually holds Bitcoin. So let's talk about what this means for you.
This is the bottom line question, right? Is your Bitcoin safe? The honest answer is, it's complicated. In a split, the safety of your coins really depends on which chain the market and the entire ecosystem decides is the real Bitcoin. And the outcome of that fight is anything but guaranteed.
And here's why it's so unpredictable. Not all investors are created equal. You have people who self-custody their coins. They can react in minutes, they're probably going to have strong opinions, and they form this powerful first wave. But then you have the institutional investors, the corporations, the ETFs. They control vast sums of money, but they are slow. They're tied up in legal documents and committees. This creates a really dangerous situation where the fastest movers could literally decide the fate of a chain before the biggest piles of capital even have a chance to enter the game.
So the most important thing here is not to be a passive bystander. You can actually be proactive. First, stay informed. You got to follow the technical discussions where they happen, on mailing lists and forums. Second, know your node. What software are you running? Core? NOTS? Do you know what its policies are? Third, evaluate every proposal with a critical eye. And finally, just be prepared. Contentious upgrades almost always lead to market volatility.
Ultimately, this whole conflict is forcing Bitcoin to look in the mirror and decide what it wants to be when it grows up. Can it find a way to be both a pristine monetary network and a platform for permissionless innovation? Or is this tension just too great? Is it going to fracture the network under the weight of its own ambition? The answer to that question is going to define the next chapter for all of us.